Hello everyone, welcome to Algoma Family Services Community Kitchen at Home Edition. I'm Sherry Beaton and I'll be your host today for our rhubarb episode. Our recipe today is going to be a quick rhubarb strawberry jam. So please everyone, go wash your hands for 20 seconds. We're going to start with a few tips about harvesting and storing rhubarb. If you've been invited to harvest from a friend's patch, please remember these few tips that are very important and respectful. The first thing to remember is to not over-harvest. It's important also you don't cut the stalks, rather you pull them. You pull them right from the base, pull up and outwards, and you'll have a stalk that has a bit of a flare at the bottom that resembles a stalk of celery when you pull it off of the bunch. And now is the time, if you think that you want to have some of this delicious rhubarb for your baking or smoothies in the middle of winter when nothing's growing outside and we're buried in snow, now is the time to do that. So you would wash your rhubarb that you're going to cut up and freeze, dry it thoroughly, chop it finely, and put it in an airtight container or a Ziploc freezer bag like I've done here. And it's important to mark the date on it and also how much is in there. So you know when you go to make a recipe, you have what you need. The date is important so that you know when you harvested it, when you put it in the freezer, and when you need to use it by. Rhubarb will keep safely in your freezer for a year. So it's really nice to know you harvest now, and throughout the whole year, you're able to take a little bit out of the freezer, put it into a recipe, and you have a taste of summer all year long. If you're going to use your rhubarb in the next month, you're just going to wrap it loosely. You're not going to wash it yet until you're ready to use it. Wrap it loosely in plastic or foil, leaving some room for air circulation so it doesn't get moldy or rot. You're going to put it in your crisper in your refrigerator, and your rhubarb will keep safely there for a month. So rhubarb is very forgiving. You don't have to make a decision today what you're going to do with it. You have time. You can search the internet for some delicious recipes, and even go to your family, because chances are people in your family have some family traditional recipes that they've made over the past. You may even remember them. Rhubarb is one of those foods that does evoke memories from childhood. My favorite memory is sneaking into the kitchen for a little glass of sugar, running to the garden, pulling a stalk, wetting it with my tongue, dipping it in the sugar, and chewing on that for an afternoon snack. So now it's time to get started on our rhubarb strawberry jam recipe. It's easy and quick to make, and it will yield 4 cups of jam. And that jam will stay safely in your refrigerator for a month, if it lasts that long. We don't need many ingredients today. We're going to need 6 cups of finely chopped rhubarb, so we're going to get to that shortly. The other ingredients we will need: 3.5 cups of white sugar, 1 box of strawberry Jello dessert, gelatin dessert. This is Jello brand, but any brand will work just as well. And we're going to use 1/4 cup of water. For kitchen utensils, we really don't need many utensils today, certainly nothing fancy. What we will need is a pot on our stovetop, a spoon to stir with, some measuring cups, and we're going to need some containers that are going to hold 4 cups worth of jam. Now I have some cleaned jars here. We're not going to be sealing them in terms of preserving them. So you can use any kind of container, whether it's plastic or glass. I like to recycle jars that I've had other foods in. And it looks to me here like I have enough that's going to hold 4 cups worth of the jam. You're going to want to make sure that you've cut the ends off, the dry ends. If it's been in your refrigerator, these ends might be a little dry. And while we're looking at these stalks, I will mention that the best stalks to harvest from the patch are ones that are longer than 8 inch and at least 1/2 inch in diameter to 1 inch. Anything bigger than that gets sort of woody and fibrous, not very flavorful. The texture is not nice. Anything smaller than that really hasn't developed the flavor yet. You don't need to look for the reddest stalks in the patch. They all taste the same. And rhubarb is a food that's similar to other fruits and vegetables like apples and tomatoes. It comes in different varieties. So a patch you see in one yard might have more red stalks than in a patch you see in another yard. So there are different varieties. And even within the patch, you might see some stalks that are more red than others, but you don't need to pick out the reddest ones. It isn't going to make a difference in the end product. So now we're going to go ahead and start chopping our 6 cups of rhubarb. We have our 6 cups of finely chopped rhubarb. We have 3.5 cups of white sugar, and we have a 1/4 cup of water. So we're going to put all of that together in the pot. We're going to turn the heat to high, and we're going to cook it on high for 2 minutes. I know this looks like a lot of sugar, but remember, it's jam. It's a little treat, and it really does need the sugar. Not only it sweetens the rhubarb, but it also helps the jam thicken. So we've been cooking on high for just over 2 minutes. And the sugar is pretty much dissolved into the water. So now we're going to cover the mixture. We're going to turn it down to medium. We're going to cook it that way for another 2 minutes. And we're going to stir it occasionally during those 2 minutes. Now, we're going to leave the heat on medium. We're going to leave the pot uncovered. And we're going to cook this for another 12 to 15 minutes. So I'll give the timer 13 minutes. And we're going to stir it occasionally. And what you want to see is you want to see that rhubarb breaking down. And it's not going to look like chunks anymore. It's going to look more like jam. So don't stray too far. You don't have to hover right over the pot. It does need a stir every few minutes. So we're almost 10 minutes into the cooking time. And at this point, you'll see that the rhubarb is really breaking down. It's going to need another couple of minutes. I can still see the shape of some pieces of the chopped rhubarb. But while this stage is finishing, I've gone and grabbed a couple of more kitchen tools. I grabbed a metal spoon, which we will need, and a small ladle. And I also have a funnel, just to make it easier to put the jam into the jars when the time comes. So we've gone the full 14 minutes cooking this pot of jam. And I actually gave my pot an extra minute or two because, if you recall, I did throw in a few extra stalks of rhubarb. So I'm going to turn the heat off. And at this point, you can see that there still is a bit of texture in the jam, and I like it that way. If you prefer it to be completely broken down, just cook it a few minutes longer. Now is time to add the Jello powder. Add the whole package of strawberry Jello powder. And we're going to stir for 2 minutes. Now during that 2 minutes, if any foam develops, we're going to use this spoon and we're going to skim that foam off. So you can see now we have a lovely red color. And that strawberry Jello is going to help the jam thicken. And it added some color, and it's going to add a lovely flavor with the rhubarb. So this jam is going to store in your refrigerator for up to a month. And it's delicious. It's delicious on your toast or bagel for breakfast. And it's great to have for a dessert. You could put it on ice cream. Or you could serve it almost like a shortcake, a strawberry shortcake. You could have biscuits and put some of this over top and maybe some ice cream or whipped cream. So it's a versatile recipe. It's great to have on hand. Your family will love it. It's going to bring back memories, perhaps, of things that you ate in your childhood and maybe haven't had in a number of years. For 2 minutes. And I've turned the light off so you can get a better view. And now it's time to put it in the jars. You need to be very careful with this step because it's very, very hot. Remember, it was just at the simmer on your stove. And things like jams, anything sugary and that's very, very hot, it really, really burns. So make sure that your workspace is cleared when you go to fill your jars, that children are out of the area and safe. And go ahead and fill your jars. I'm going to use a ladle and a funnel and fill my 4 jars. And now you're going to leave it, you're going to separate your jars on the counter and leave it there to cool. And once it's cool, you're going to put it in the refrigerator. And you will be able to use that for, store it in the fridge safely and use it for a whole month. I hope you really enjoy this tasty recipe. And I hope the little tips that we discussed today about rhubarb inspire you to go out and harvest some. Put some in the freezer for winter. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. Until then, stay well and enjoy cooking.